We'll call this meeting of the Executive Committee to order. We're all here with bright and smiling faces. This meeting was posted appropriately by the clerk's office. We'll rise for a moment of silent prayer and a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to go a little bit out of order. We're going to take the Samaritan issue first.
Yeah, minutes.
Oh, okay. Anybody have any corrections or discussion on the minutes? Then we'll mark them as approved as referenced. So we have an update on Samaritan.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quite an update to give you today on Samaritan. It's been a long and arduous process, but in the last 24 or 36 hours, we have officially signed a purchase agreement with EOM. That's the good news. The additional news is there's a laundry list of agreements and easements and a number of other things, interim management agreements that need to be worked through. They have everything to do with the timing of license transfers, which are all three, you'll recall, RCAC, CBRF, and Skilled Nursing Facility, are all three separate licenses. Those are all in process of approval with the State of Wisconsin Department of Health Services. We have every reason to believe skilled nursing should be imminent approval. RCAC likely not far behind that. And then CBRF is probably a little bit more of a question. Is that a good way to explain it? Yeah, it could be a matter of months or even a full year. So we're working now on staging and timing. And with that, of course, comes some give and take. But suffice it to say, the purchase agreement is in place. That's for the real property in particular. And the operating and transfer agreements will be the next major milestone. Everything is currently on track, assuming licensure gets worked through, a skilled nursing license. If we're to be able to get that transferred before the end of this month, we're probably looking at closing before the end of this month for a July 1st transfer. But all of the sequencing of all of those different agreements that I talked about and all those signatures would have to transpire and take place. Nothing's a major hurdle at this stage in the game, so to speak. It's more of a matter of time and state approvals than it is really anything else. As of yesterday morning, I met with Jacob from EOM for coffee in the morning. That was following both of us signing that purchase agreement. After coffee, Jacob was over at Samaritan, and Matt can dive into some more of the details about his visit with staff and residents and Matt. Where I left things off with coffee with Jacob was that he was intending to have a regular cadence of coming back as early as next week potentially to continue to IDOT and T-Cross. So the first major milestone of an actual signed agreement it has been hurdled. But this isn't the last one. There's still multiples. So everything continues to move in process as we anticipated. When we get to county board, if you recall, we were to come back to county board in August with a full report. I think we should be well on our way for a full detailed analysis, similar to what you received in closed session last month with what exactly transpired with signed documents and so on and so forth by the time we hit that August requirement. So, Matt, anything you want to update before we take questions?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, yesterday Jacob did meet. He spent probably 4.5 hours at Samaritan, 3 hours talking with employees and residents. First of all, I'd like to thank all the departments, Washington County departments, because they too are working very diligently to try to make this happen. There are so many different pieces in the puzzle to make this all happen, and a lot of departments are moving mountains to make this happen. So I'm really appreciative of that. And Jacob met with the residents first, and I'd say there were somewhere about 30 residents, the majority of them coming from the CBRF and RCAC. It was very short notice from the signing, and he was on his way out of town, so we were able to capture him in the morning and immediately set up meetings. So you can imagine a myriad of family members and others complaining that they weren't given notice and what have you. But it's not a purchase, it's the purchase agreement. It's the first step. And so Jacob had an excellent time with the residents, and after 2/3 of the meeting, they started asking him about his family, his children, where he lives, and how often he's going to be there, and they applauded when it was over. So I thought it was extremely positive. Then with the employees, it's very scary. And even though we talked about it for 4+ years, when it actually happens, it's very scary. And so he was very transparent and met with, I'd say, somewhere guessing about 50 employees. And then he stayed around and others came in asking questions. Some of the nice things is he assured them that everyone would have a job. So those who want to stay can stay. Some of them, 2 or 3, he doesn't have an exact match, but it's part of my job to find some type of match that's close enough so they all could have a job. Secondly, he said that he would continue their pay as is, and they were very pleased with that. Third, he talked about whether his system is vacation and sick time. He may keep that, or he may go to a PTO system. But the nice thing about that, he said, you would not have to start over again. He will match their years at Samaritan and come up matching his system as to how many vacation and sick time or PTO time they would have. He also said that he would waive the requirement for insurance, and that if we do start up July 1, their insurance coverage would start July 1, and they wouldn't have to worry about the headache of COBRA. So I think all in all, it was extremely positive. People are apprehensive. I have some quitting. I have people upset, but I think as time goes on, it'll slow down and people will accept this transition and at least try it out. And I'm very, very pleased with that. He will be back to spend at least 4+ hours on Tuesday, and he's bringing in a whole team starting Monday for those who want employment to start filling out all the applications for insurance and what have you. So I think overall it's been very positive. Our contract services are nervous, and rightly so, because we don't have a firm answer, as Jacob did say all along our negotiations. He would start with not changing a thing, but he does have outside players, and he would evaluate each contract on its own as to, can he make it work, or will he have to go back to what he's familiar with. So now we're having a myriad of requests because he has a number of outside contractors as well as regional directors, and they're all calling and they're all expecting information yesterday, and we're going crazy. Any questions?
We dump some more on.
Yeah.
Any questions?
You know, I guess I do have one question, if I can. I know we've been doing some maintenance out there. Are we up to date with all this stuff that we?
No, I'm telling you, when I say the departments are really working at it, Scott and his group, Kara Herdrich, she's done phenomenal. And our goal is to spend the $800,000 that you granted, and we're probably within about $100,000 not spent. We have contractors coming in, and they all know that even if we start up with EOM July 1, they could be in-house working in July, August to finish it up. But it's looking great. We have all the pieces, most of them ordered already, some coming in, the contract services all scheduled to come in. So it will be our commitment as we've said.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I just have a question as far as the overlap of Jacob and his team with the signed information now being the first step involved in some of that planning and who you hire in to do what and contract, and is that already mapped together somehow? Or?
No. I've met the director of acquisition. That's one of his team members, and I'm working with him. He'll be here next week as well, and we're working on a myriad of things. And it is Jacob's call and his company as to all the contracts and where we stand. But I've talked with Greenfield, I've talked with BSG as to today our contract is still valid, and they are working, and I can't say if it'll continue with EOM, if it'll last until July 1, August 1, September 1. I really don't know, but he is calling the shots.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of work going on over there right now.
Pardon me?
Construction, or what are we? We're doing a lot of
Construction from outside agencies, from plumbers and electricians. This has been going on for half a year.
okay.
Yes.
And how are our residents holding up with that, and what are their thoughts on it all?
I think our residents, for the most part, don't even realize it's going on.
Okay. So, as staff, are they seeing this stuff done? Is that kind of changing any minds, or is that just inconsequential?
I believe the staff who see it and recognize what's going on, they're very pleased because it means that our census will begin to go up. And it is going up. We have 48 today in the skilled nursing, 25 in the CBRF, and 21 in the RCAC. And we have a number of admissions. We had four admissions today. And that number is not part of the 48 I mentioned. But we'll have discharges tonight, tomorrow, so it'll balance. But we are on a steady incline.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Certainly good news.
Thank you.
Thank you. You had mentioned that some of the staff had already submitted resignations. Is it a number that is concerning, or is it a fairly small number? Can you describe that?
Today it's I hate to describe it as minor because any termination is a problem, but it's minor in numbers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Executive Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would emphasize Matt's commentary as regard to census levels. He rattled off the numbers today, and staffing is closely associated with those census numbers, but it's also part and parcel to making sure that we're able to transition as seamlessly as possible to EOM. Obviously, they want those numbers up significantly higher, and we can only go so far as long as we have staffing. So this PSA getting signed is a really big deal because it starts to bring some certainty. It raises a lot of questions too, but it helps bring some certainty to know this is happening. This isn't another trilogy type of a situation. There's actually some documents getting signed and closing dates and things of that nature happening. So I think there's a high degree of certainty that June 30th is going to be nearly or close to the closing date, and July 31st would be even closer of a certainty if for whatever reason the licensure issue transpires with the state. It doesn't happen quickly enough, so to speak. I think we're within a close window here of hopefully 15, but no more than 45 days.
Yes.
Is that
Yes, very accurate. Yes. We could close and be up with EOM July 1. The biggest thing is they need a license in hand. And that's the whole thing we're waiting for. And he thought he'd have it by last Friday, and he hasn't received it yet. But no indicators leading us to believe it's not going to happen.
And of course, if we start getting close to the end of the month and we still don't have it, then we certainly can reach out to DHS and will just to try to expedite. The skilled nursing one is the big one. That's the one we're most in. That is what will precipitate the closing or hinder it.
Yeah, me too.
So these licenses, there's 3 different licenses, correct? And they're coming in 3 phases, possibly or probably. Then would EOM take over as they come? So say skilled nursing comes in first, they would take over skilled nursing, the other we would still have.
No, that's what I was alluding to in regards to the interim management agreements. So, because if you think about that, what you just described, you would basically be talking about phased transfer of staffing and phased contracts, and the interim management agreements in conjunction with the operating and transfer agreements are key in order to be able to hand everything over July 1st, as Matt indicated. And then there's the practical reality of it's handed over, but technically those licenses are our licenses. So they're managing our licenses. It looks, tastes, feels from an outsider's perspective like it's EOM now operating, and it is. But we technically have the license until the state approves it. So we certainly don't want to phase it. For the biggest reason is it would be very difficult on not only the county organization, but I think those employees. And the key to this whole success, as Jacob alluded to when he was here a few months ago, is happy employees make happy residents. We've got to keep staff in order to be able to execute the mission.
Very good, thank you.
The question, sorry. And the question I have that kind of alludes to that as well. I mean, we're turning it over July, but you were talking about doing maintenance in August. Do we have a definitive, we're fixing X and then we're done kind of agreement?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
If you know Kara, she is very succinct and she has it all laid out. So if they do take over July 1, there will not be additional work. No, it's just the contracted.
Yeah, you'll have a set of,
Yes.
okay, we got to fix
It's
this.
very
and this,
black and
once
white.
we're done, it's on you.
Yes.
And not that they keep coming back and,
No.
hey, the light's out.
Yes, you're
Right,
correct.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have the buttons on Jacob's jacket before this is over. The way she's.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you very much. Good news indeed.
Yes, thank you.
Our next item is the Budget Policy and Analytics Quarterly Report.
All right. Good afternoon. So Our quarterly report is really reflecting some continuing goals from the basically from the initiatives that you've seen for the last couple of reports. One thing we've learned in year 3 now of doing these is that as a support department, we should reserve some capacity for the role we play supporting other departments' initiatives. So you'll see, a good set of initiatives and goals here, but we do play a key role in supporting all of the other initiatives that you see. So, so I do have, 3 initiatives to share here. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. There's one initiative on position control, so that's our internal process for maintaining and budgeting and tracking all of the county's approved positions. So there's a couple of goals in there just to build out some tools and things like that. The next page is an initiative around our time and attendance software. So that's to just to continue to improve on how we use it, how we train folks to use it. And then to investigate possibly expanding it into other areas where it's not being used today. And then the final goal or the final initiative on here is related to the budget. So ongoing development of, again, developing tools to continue to support our departments that we support. So happy to answer any questions. One thing I did want to add. We've got a new hire in BPA, started this week. His name is Isaiah Durr. He's very, very sharp. We're excited to have him. Harvard grad. So very, very sharp guy. Knows a lot in the AI, IT kind of a space. So he should be able to bring some real efficiencies as well to the organization.
Any questions or discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is the Finance Department Quarterly Report.
Good afternoon. So, not much update from our report from last quarter. As Aaron alluded to, we also are a service department, so we've kept some of our goals a little bit more generic to account for goals that will be involving us from other departments. We've got one that we're currently working on right now that meets that category, and I'll get to that towards the end. So our first one for resource utilization, we have completed the transition for the bank recs into the finance office. Kathy Wild worked on that with the treasurers. So that's completed and is working good. We are pretty much complete working with the county clerk on expanding the inventory module for their election supplies. Dave worked with Mary on that. There's not much left, just maybe a little bit of reporting that we want to confirm is working. The ADRC contracts are in Tyler as planned, so that one is almost complete as well. Again, we're just down to final reporting pieces. And then the last one on that one is the human services account structure, which we have not started yet. That'll be starting later this year. So our ACH payments for vendors, we're on track there. We are hopefully going to have more than the 15 that we planned. We've been adding them as they come along and reaching out to vendors that we pay their high amounts to or frequently so that we can get them added to ACH payments, which is a little bit more secure than mailing checks. So. And then on the last page is where I alluded to working with other departments on their goals. Right now, Dave is working with our highway department, transit area, on starting to look at how we develop a fleet inventory for vehicles. Right now, we're focusing on non-sheriff squads. There's still a lot of other vehicles in the county. I'm trying to get a handle on those and bringing all of our records into alignment between the financial records for the capital assets, the insurance records that the county clerks maintains, and then maintenance records on those as well. So that's what we've got. If there's any questions?
Do any committee members have a question? There being none, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to wait. I think I'm the next item, too. Oh, maybe not. I think
Nope.
Deb goes next.
Next Generation
Yep.
Housing 2.0 Framework Update.
Good afternoon. So the last couple of months, we've been working on developing the new Next Generation Housing Framework. We're named it 2.0. There's a lot of new mechanisms that can be utilized by developers and builders. And this is a real shift between where we started back in October of 2021, where we really thought that Next Gen Housing was only going to be successful if we're working directly with local governments and having those local governments purchase the land. And we quickly realized that we were kind of missing the mark a little bit, and we have shifted now from that framework to this 2.0 framework, making it as nimble as possible for builders and developers, as well as local governments if interested, in utilizing the Next Gen Housing Fund. And so we've made it nimble, we've reorganized, we've included some new mechanisms that can make it as easy as possible. There's a lot of changes. I'm not going to go through all these changes, but I just wanted to highlight some of the key points. This has really evolved out of, adjusting for market trends and just being able to look at the research that was done. In your packet, I included the price point analysis that was included. I am not going to review that, but I can certainly answer any questions. And Hannah Keckeisen from my office is also here to answer any questions that you might have on the price point analysis, which is also the basis of the changes to NGH 2.0. So I just want to begin looking at some of the key changes, and I'll go through this as quickly as possible. I just wanted to point out that we are going to be including a town representative on the Next Gen Housing Committee. I think it's very important that we have a representative for all the towns, because this opportunity is certainly not just for the cities and villages in the county. The next page, I'm just going through this page by page. The next page, the key point I want to highlight is on page 11. This is the housing affordability section. And on the bottom of that, it has, as of January 2024, the dual income household making $25 per hour will make a gross annual income of about $104,000. At 30% of the household income, which is what Next Generation Housing tries to achieve, they can afford a home just under $340,000, really between $325,000 and $340,000. So that was like the reasoning for the new price point, which I want to get some of the key components of NGH 2.0 on the bottom of page 12. The first one is the price point adjustments. So we're proposing that there would be 40% of units sold under, and these again are owner-occupied units, 40% under $340,000, another 40% under $360,000, and then the remaining would be under that $420,000. So we originally went from 75% of development being under $320,000, and then the 25% under $420,000, and now we have shifted that with the lower price point being higher, but we have not moved up the high price point at all. We do have accommodation for a multifamily. If there is a development that has all multifamily, just imagine blocks of 8 or 10 townhome row houses that are virtually the same. It would be very hard for that builder to meet those adjusted price points. And so we have a lot averaging. So if we have a development that's 100% multifamily, we'd be looking at meeting the price point under $364,000. On page 14, one of the new mechanisms, new ideas that we have for NGH 2.0 is the 50% permit fee incentive. Developers and builders may be eligible for an incentive that provides 50% of the residential building permit fees, and that is up to $6,000 as a maximum. In the budget, we're providing for $600,000 for this incentive. This would be piloted to no more than 3 developments just to try it out and track the success before launching it as a permanent part of our program. And that 50% permit fee, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that would be tied to the deed restriction. And as you know, we have the deed restriction already established for any type of price point difference between the fair market value and the sale price. That would also be tied to that deed restriction. And if someone sells their home in the first 5 years, then a portion of that would be paid back to the county. The next new mechanism, which is very exciting and very innovative, and working with our EDWC, is utilizing TID increment. So as it stands now with our traditional next-gen housing development, if we have a price point of $340,000, the builder would need to have a home lot package of $320,000, and then that $20,000 incentive that was paid to them in the beginning would be collected at the close when the first home buyer purchases the property, and that those funds get revolved back to Washington County. For utilizing TID increment, it's a little bit different, where we still provide the $20,000 per owner-occupied unit, but instead of that builder or that home buyer then paying that $20,000 back, the next-gen housing development would be within a TID that would be created in partnership with our local governments, and then there would be a defined structure for payback from the TID increment back to Washington County. So depending on how the structure of the TID is created, it could be a payback of 5 years, it could be a payback of 20 years. It really depends on how the structure of the TID is, and that would be individual for each development. So this is very new and creative, and is helping those builders and developers meet the next-gen housing price points. So on page 15, I thought it would be ideal just to help developers and builders understand how they can utilize numerous funding mechanisms for development scenarios. So I have 3 scenarios that I've outlined. The first one is the typical next-gen housing development where we're working with a private developer or builder. The next-gen housing price points apply. Owner occupancy requirements apply to all 3 of these scenarios. They would be eligible for the $20,000 next-gen housing incentive, and that would be tied to a lien on the property. They'd be eligible for the 50% permit incentive, and again, that would be tied to that deed restriction. And then scenario 2 is when a development, next-gen housing development, would be paid back by the TID increment. Again, the price points, owner occupancy requirements apply to this. They would be provided the $20,000, but it would be the $20,000 would be paid back by the increment in the TID and how it's structured. And then for providing these funds ahead of the increment, the TID is going to provide annual payments of principal and interest. That'll be according to the schedule and the terms detailed out in the development agreement. For this scenario, those builders, since they were getting the increment through the TID and the establishment of the next-gen housing within that framework, they would not be eligible for the permit fee incentive. For scenario number 3, this is also a new scenario where the county purchases the land and either provides it to a developer at a reduced cost or free, and then in that scenario, any purchase of land obviously would go through the county board for approval. We would work with EDWC to put together a return on investment for that purchase. Again, the price point supply, owner occupancy requirements apply. And that value between the sale price and the fair market value, that discount that's provided, that would be tied to that deed restriction. And if the first homeowner sells within the first 5 years, then a portion of those funds come back to the county. The next thing I wanted to point out on page 16 is related to the funding. We've eliminated the separate funds. We have all the funds in one pool that would be available to local governments, builders, and developers. Again, we're shifting from that pilot format to the private developers and local governments. And as such, we've eliminated the $2.4 million cap that we had on any one development. We are very eager to get through our goal of 1,000 owner-occupied dwelling units, and so we no longer have a cap on that. On page 17, we have a housing-related planning incentive. This would be at the discretion of the executive committee for paying for any type of housing studies, or if a local government needs to amend their zoning ordinance to allow for next-gen housing, being able to grant the funds for that. Project eligibility. We've included the eligible expenses on page 19 for the 50% permit fee, and then on page 20, the project approval process. As the Next Gen Housing Committee is advisory to the Executive Committee, we've eliminated the under $10,000 approval process for the Next Gen Housing Committee. So all projects would come through to the Executive Committee for approval. And then on page 21, we do provide a means for approval if we aren't able to get a quorum of the Next Gen Housing Committee prior to a project needing to be approved. Next, I want to jump to page 25, 26, 27, 28. You should have gotten a separate handout related to the real estate fees. We originally had a not to exceed 4% for the seller's agent and the co-broke fee. In discussions that we had over the course of the last few months with realtors and builders, lenders, and also the advice of outside counsel, we've included and changed some of the language that was originally provided in the framework. Essentially, the listing broker fee will not exceed 2%, and the fee of 2% shall also be paid to the broker with procuring cause. And also this section is subject to modification and will change with any applicable law or regulation. There's currently some case law that is going through, and our outside counsel anticipates that that will have an impact on these sections. Lastly, I just wanted to go over a couple of points on page 27. For if the sale price, if a builder does sell a home above our price points, if they exceed those price points, the builder may be subject to penalties outlined in the development agreement, including forfeiting to the county any sales proceeds exceeding those price points and potential termination of agreement. That builders shall receive and review all offers, and that builders negotiate any earnest money based on actual potential losses. The last thing on page 45, I just wanted to point out, this is our screening checklist. I'm not going to go through these changes, but just so you know, the appropriate changes were made based on all the changes on the NGH 2.0. So that is a very quick review of all of the changes for Next Gen Housing 2.0, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Supervisor Chaudhry.
Thank you. I went through this weekend and tried to absorb it. Alcohol helped. But my previous understanding of some of this stuff, I was wondering if you could, is this still falling within the parameter of the original budget? Because now we're talking about buying
Yes.
land. and all that stuff, are we still falling within that perimeter budget that we
Yeah, the budget.
established?
Yep, the budget is established and it's outlined. I should have pointed that out on page 18. We started with 7.5 million, and at the fall of last year, the committee did approve an extra $750,000 allocation into this. So we have 8.25 million dedicated to next gen housing.
Okay, and that would also take care of if we do some purchase of land and all that stuff too?
It would, yes. In every scenario that we see right now, it absolutely would. I would say now entering this new next generation 2.0, if you had, for example, a TIF redevelopment like we had with Kewaskum with Drexel, if there was similar alignment, we may want to talk about, are we better off leveraging debt for this rather than using our own cash? But other than that, I think it's everything here. And of course, if we were to do that, the board would have to approve it by a 3/4 vote. So everything will be within the parameters of what we already have or has to come to you for approval. And not just the 5 of you, but the whole county board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So kind of going at this kind of a little bit wild, but
Don't do that.
what about county land that's already owned? We are very large landowners in this county.
Right. Yes.
And what would be the potential in this program for utilizing some of that property to develop?
There's certainly a lot of potential for looking at existing county land and providing next-gen housing on that.
Yeah, I agree. You scare me when you start with comments like this might be wild, but that's really actually not that wild. No, I think there's lots of opportunity. Our campus is massive, and it could be everything from, some of you may be familiar with the property west of the intersection of Creek, Schmidt, and Rolfs Road, just south of Regalware, for example. That's all land owned by the county. Everything on the south side of Highway 33 here has potential for development. I mean, everything from around Family Promise all the way up to Samaritan's current property. So there's a lot of land that we own elsewhere too. I mean, I think certainly from my vantage point, everything that's county owned that can be put back on the tax roll, that's appropriate to be put on the tax roll, should be put back on the tax roll. So I would say all options are open. So we're starting from yes, unless there's some reason really strong reason to say no. I would say if a developer was interested, if a municipality was interested, we'd start from yes.
Any others?
Go ahead.
No, we'll stay with the committee first.
Got it. Thank you for your report. I appreciate that you highlighted the changes in red so we can find them easily. That worked out well. I noticed there were there was a page that had volunteer organizations. Is it easy on the website for additional organizations to apply for those volunteer positions? I hadn't looked at it myself, but
Yeah.
if you give me some feedback, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, the volunteer organizations, and just to be clear, that is under the umbrella of Next Gen Housing, but it's truly its own program now. It's the Heart and Homestead incentive. Okay. And a separate agenda item. So maybe we can talk about that later on in the agenda.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for reining me back in.
Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was it yesterday that we had our next generation?
It was Monday afternoon.
Or Monday. This week's going fast so far. I did vote in favor of passing this along to the executive committee. I just did want to bring a couple items that, from my personal perspective, I think that could use a little bit more discussion or look at from this approving committee. And so I won't chew up too much of your time, but I'd like to bring at least 3 items to your attention. The first one is the adjusted price points. I want to first say I'm happy that we did not move the upper price point at all. We kept that at that 420 mark. Understanding and using the feedback from some of the builders and developers that the lower end was hard to meet. So we did have to make those adjustments on the bottom side there. But I do struggle a little bit with the averaging for the multifamily that's been implemented into this plan. The averaging is based off of the single family cost per square foot prices that we've put into this plan. Multifamily, though, typically sells, and honestly, during construction too, should be at a lower price point due to some cost savings based off of those designs. So I would make a recommendation to this committee that the averaging of costs be lower than what's currently presented to this committee. I personally think I'm more comfortable on the averaging of using the $350,000 price point, including the next generation housing, $20,000 loan in that number. But obviously I would open up to this committee for discussion if they choose to discuss further. Do you want me to go on to my other 2 points or take 1 point at a time?
Let's flesh that one out first.
Yeah, that sounds like.
No, we're just kind of generally giving a consensus thumbs up. So, yeah, and it doesn't go to the full board, so I think we need to work this out.
It was presented at the Next Generation Housing Committee that the executive committee is the approving committee for this.
Right.
Oh, gotcha. So it was brought up in that committee. Okay, that was
We
my question.
we didn't want to get too far in the weeds because we were on a time restriction to make sure it got to this committee meeting.
I think that proposal makes all the sense in the world. I think in order for us to keep moving on a number of projects we currently have, I guess my recommendation or request of you would be that we approve what you have in front of us today and then go back to the Next Gen Housing Committee, give us a chance to talk to some developers and builders to make sure is 350 the right number or is there some other number even, but tighten it up the way that Supervisor Krebs is requesting and then make that amendment again at the next committee meeting, bring it back to you at your committee meeting and have any amendments at that point in time. That gives us time to actually do some additional research too. But it sounds reasonable logic, I guess is what I'm saying. I just want to make sure we're tightening it up. If you're okay with that.
Seeing this is kind of a living document, we're just about having an update every month. Is that reasonable to you, Supervisor Krebs?
Yes, I wish maybe we would have taken more time to get this document to you today then instead. But it was presented that it was needed to get here, I guess, quickly. I would say we have a upcoming July meeting already set up for Next Generation Housing, so I would definitely make sure that's going to be put on that agenda right away then. Because in the meantime, this document is a document that is put out there for everyone to use at this point and develop their projects based off of that. So for the next month, if projects start coming before us, we have to use this price point here today if you accept and pass it. So I guess then this would be probably the same discussion for the next 2 points I'm bringing up to you, that they need more attention. Maybe it's not even worth bringing them up at this committee then if you want, and we re-examine them at the next Generation Housing Committee instead then.
Might it be appropriate to do a footnote or something with these to say, this isn't a final number? Yeah.
Yeah, to your point, nothing is final. We're continuing to evolve on this and roll. I mean, even the most recent development that was announced yesterday with Regal Ware and American Construction Services, there's a lot of changes from that we wouldn't have contemplated And that's a unique property, like so many of these projects have been. So I think that's completely fair for us to footnote it. But quite frankly, every time they come to us, there's a bundle of footnotes. We make changes based on almost every proposal that comes in. But what are the other, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, the other two? Because maybe we can discharge them quickly.
Yeah, I don't want to create a 1 month loophole that somebody can, I know designs don't happen that fast, but go on.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys taking the time here. Second one is and there's multiple spots in the document where it refers to it, so it'd have to be addressed for all areas where it's referenced. But land acquisition, I would like the county to go on record of stating in this document that no lands that may be used for next generation housing, if they've been obtained through eminent domain at any level of through municipality or through the county or state. Just that in there, showing that we respect personal property rights and that all partners in these projects are coming to the table willingly and openly.
That sounds reasonable. What do you think?
I think that's very reasonable. I wouldn't anticipate it to be a huge problem. Most of these developments are larger. I mean, I don't see us taking out farms or anything like that. Certainly not under eminent domain. Tax lien, now do you mean tax liens or foreclosures as well? Or?
Eminent domain. It's
Eminent domain.
Supreme Court case allows for for redevelopment through that process.
Yeah, then I would certainly think that's fair.
In our 8 years, I can't remember we ever doing that, so.
I'm not concerned about the board now. It's not concerned about myself or any of us here today. It's what we're setting up for future municipalities, not only the county, but all of our partners at the other levels and stuff. And then the last one is a concern about the 50% permit grant or the local government fees match. Currently, it's listed for any typical government fees charged. A lot of those fees, we have to remember, are disguised or explained as user fees, and they've grown over the years. Personally, if the county takes on 50% of that cost of those, I don't think we're ever going to challenge the local municipalities to really cut their fees in those areas. If we're only going to enable them to charge more, because the end user is not paying for it. We're paying for it at the county. So I would like to see the permit fees really reduce back what I'm calling the life safety fees. So the general building permit, the safe, a water, sanitary, where you're going to have safe conditions. I'll throw in there and say fire department type fees that they want to charge on stuff. And I'm not saying local municipalities in Washington County do it now today, but other places they do it. There's parks fees, which we do charge in Washington County and some municipalities, sidewalk fees, curb tree fees, recycling fees, mailbox fees, so everyone has the same mailbox. I don't want to be paying 50% at the county level of these fees that municipalities refuse to tighten up on if we're really trying to make housing affordable. So though that area, I think, needs a little more tightening up on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I could have definitely built houses with my brother, so I have a little bit of knowledge like Mr. Krebs does, Supervisor Krebs, excuse me. Yeah, you got your fee-fi-fo-fum fees, fee fees, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, if you're having them related strictly to, land recording fees, permit fee, those types of things, well, in the city, it would just be your typical permit fee, which your heating, electrical, plumbing, lot, and all the rest of that. Would seem to me to be the proper thing. Yeah, I'd hate to see garbage fees or streetlight fees being thrown out there.
If you want to look on page 19. That was a list based on some permit fee structure that I've gotten from the Village of Jackson, and then I had a catch-all on the last bullet, which is other typical local government fees for new dwelling permits.
Yeah, maybe that has to be tightened up a little.
And you have to remember, we're trying to make next gen housing as nimble as possible for builders to be enticed to want to build these homes for the public, to meet that demand that's out there. So this was just one mechanism to do that. Eliminating any of these fees on that list is not going to go far in having the local governments remove those fees.
Yeah, and that's what I just real quickly wanted to comment on that as well, is as I was sold this whole plan, which I'm very on board for, part of one of the motivations of this was to try to get municipal governments to reduce some of their costs implementing things like lot sizes and setbacks and fees were also part of it. So while I do in concept agree that if we can help reduce that, that's one way we can save our new homeowners money. But yes, I do also agree with Brian Krebs, Supervisor Krebs, that if we're kind of incentivizing municipalities to not change their ways, that kind of runs counterproductive to what we want to do here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So let's just take one step back, because I wholeheartedly agree with this entire conversation, and it's extraordinarily complicated. And what I mean by that is there's like 3 or 4 different layers to the discussion about fees, just generally speaking. But before we dive into that, let's remember one thing. There's 4 key areas that we've found that drive these housing costs in particular. Infrastructure is the big one. Land costs is not far behind it. Local regulation, and I don't mean permits, I mean set zoning, setbacks, all that stuff, and there's bundles of it. And then permits and fees. And as Supervisor Krebs pointed out, relatively speaking, Washington County is pretty confined relative to what we're charging. If you go to other communities, particularly, for example, on the North Shore, their fees are really out of control. But there is a market basis to them. In other words, what we hear from developers is there's a certain degree of sunk costs. They're almost ignored because you just assume you're going to have X amount of fees. Now that is part of the marketplace, just generally speaking. But that being said, let's look at this for a moment from a municipality's perspective. A municipality that has had property tax levy restrictions on it since 2005. I mean, everybody in this room has heard municipalities whining and complaining about revenue for really the better part of the last 15 years. They see this from their lens. They see this as a way to fund their operation. And if you get them in a moment of honesty, they will admit to you those fees don't just cover the building permit inspector, whether it's HVAC or electrical or whatever. It's also covering the clerk's costs or the cop's fees, or there's a multitude of government expenses that these are now built in covering. So for us to stand here and ideologically or theoretically talk about just eliminating a fee probably isn't realistic. Instead, you have to prove to them that if you do this, it will actually drive more development, which is also a theory. Like, I believe if we cover half of the cost of 3 pilot developments, it will help incentivize developers to say, okay, that's enough for me to put skin in the game and build these homes. That may or may not be true. If I can prove it to be true, I can then prove to the municipality we took that permit fee, let's just say for a round number, it was $20,000 down to $10,000. If you take your permit fees from $20,000 to $10,000, you'll generate more revenue. And what I mean by that is that revenue that they see, that $20,000 for, let's say, 30 units over the course of 3 years is money in the door in those 3 years. And municipal budgets work in such a way where they aren't looking 5 years down the road. They're looking 12 months down the road, and that's it, because they can't figure out how to balance their budgets. So I want to help them to be able to see 5 years down the road, because the minute you start looking 5 years down the road, you realize those same 30 units are now kicking out $30 million of assessed value, and that $30 million is creating X amount in property tax revenue in the village of Jackson or in the city of Hartford. Never mind all the other taxing jurisdictions in that same unit. I can literally show the math if I can get the data to be able, from a pilot project, to be able to say, look, it works. Now, I disdain, in particular, in that fee structure, I disdain impact fees. I think they hoodwink people. I think it's a complete joke. I think the fact that we believe new people in a community should pay for splash pads that we put in 15 years ago doesn't make any sense. They're allowed under the law, and we have them. So God bless them. They're there. I'm not trying to solve that problem today, and we probably aren't going to solve that problem for 20 years. That being said, the only way for us to be able to, I believe, prove to them that this is a workable solution amongst those four things is to actually have hard data and say we have an actual development with actual assessed value, with actual tax revenue in these years that show you if you just cut fees, if you just give a discount now, you're going to actually make more money in the long haul, and it'll be ongoing revenue forever. And I'm telling you right now, and I'm sure you see this at committees, that is not how they look at the world. So, like I said, this is a multi-dimensional issue. I am wholeheartedly on board with trying to help push the municipalities to ultimately be the ones that cut those fees. But there's too many lenses to look through to know whether this is going to have the desired impact or it isn't. We may do it and prove to them that the math works, and the developers turn around and say, yeah, Josh, it doesn't make any difference. That extra 10 grand, it's sunk cost for me. I don't care. It's not like I'm going to cut the cost of the house. The value of the house is the value of the house is the value of the house. I really don't know. I think, based on some conversations with a few developers, I think this will work. But if we can't get more than one to go, this is exercise in futility. So it's part of my logic with, like, let's try things and see what works and what doesn't work, and we come back and continually have this exact conversation. But I think to pull any of them out, let's just try it. Let's just try it as it is my request of you, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I mean, I'll be the first one to say, yeah, it didn't work. We shouldn't replicate that.
Well, and part of this, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Part of this, when we were discussing it early on, was incentivizing local municipalities. And now that I see your explanation, this is a way to incentivize them because now you can show them the math. So I think that really alleviates my concerns. Obviously, if they start adding on fees, that would be a whole different thing.
Big time.
But in this particular case, I guess what I'm seeing you're saying is that we're doing this to show them the math. And this is kind of what I had a discussion with Senator Strobel about, because he came at me about this whole program. And I said, really, the goal is to make affordable housing in our county and incentivizing builders as well as local municipalities in working together to reduce the costs. You can't control inflation or material costs or labor or things like that, but the things you can do is the size, the regulations, that kind of thing. And that's ultimately our goal. So having heard your explanation, I feel a lot more comfortable about this program, because I see that it's something that's trying to incentivize and show our work to the municipalities.
Right.
So
similar to our election integrity thing. Right. Not exactly the same, but it's similar. Just try to take the excuses out of the way, and let's see what can be done.
Very good.
Are you okay with that? Okay.
I think we both share a disdain for impact fees and some of those ancillary fees that certain villages and cities think make their quality of life better. So let's show them the math. And I don't have any math in front of me, so this is dangerous for myself saying this, but let's show them a way and really put our money where our mouth is, and let's pay 100% of fees in this grant program then, but limit it to the core building permit fees. We're not 50% matching grant park fees or impact fees, but if it's a building permit, if it's a water connection or sanitary connection, pay 100%. The developers will still get what they want, because at the end of the day, this is not about the developers. They're just part of the process. At the end result, it's about housing that's affordable for the residents of Washington County. So at the end of the day, whatever we give developers as a pass-through goes as a pass-through right to the end user. So pay 100% of the permits to help spur the development. At the same time, we can sit here and say we're not encouraging building more extra useless parks that go unused through some of these communities. City of Hartford has a pocket park for every new development that goes in, and if they choose not to build that, the developer pays the park fee instead.
Yep.
And every park has a maintenance cost to it that does not go down with time; it goes up with time.
I'm 100% in agreement. If that's the direction
I
the committee wants to go, I totally
forget the
support
number
that.
of parks in Hartford. It's 29 or 35, somewhere in that range. And they're all, each one of those parks represent a buildable lot that got taken away from that subdivision and dedicated to the park, so now everyone can pay for that park in the future. I like parks, but there's a limit to it. So,
I agree. I'm in agreement. I'll stop talking. Oh yeah.
not trying to
I
drag
love that.
and I apologize. I'm not
Junk.
trying to drag the details to the executive committee. I'll stop now with it and stuff. But you are the approving authority for a document like this. There wasn't the appetite for it at the committee level. I felt, and there again, there's only 2 elected officials at that meeting, and a lot of government representatives from there. So.
Supervisor Krebs, you are an authority as a builder, so we appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Agreed.
So this being a pilot program and us being nimble, I think you've got enough input from us now. And if somebody starts to abuse something like this, I feel pretty certain that it's going to change the next month. We'll revise it again and stop that. So let's see what works. Everybody agree?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the input, Brian.
Good. I've been asked to go next to the H&H. Oh, are we done?
No, we need a motion.
Oh. Supervisor Schulteis, Supervisor Schwab. Any further discussion? Then all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you haven't been talked out, we'll go right to H&H so you can finish your presentation.
Okay.
This is item G.
For the $500,000 ARPA
Yes.
request? Okay. So the Heart and Homestead program, it was, as you know, rolled out April 4th. It was a great success. But there was a high demand for this incentive, and I think it was a month and a day. We tapped out, and we had to shut down the application portal. So this proposal is for the county to allocate $500,000 of the ARPA funds as a match to entice matching contributions from the private sector. We're looking at online. There is a form that individuals can fill out if they are interested in knowing when we have additional funds. To date, we have 88 individuals and families that have registered that are interested in applying for the Heart and Homestead program. And before you do take any action, I wanted to invite 3 recipients of the Heart and Homestead program just to provide their stories. We have Mitchell Makowski, Matt Knight, and Kelly Dermody. And I'd like to hand the podium over to them, that they can each tell their stories to you. So Kelly?
Committee's fine with that.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kelly Darmody. I grew up here in Washington County. You may be familiar with my grandpa, Clyde Darmody's founded business, Honey Grove Ice Cream. If not, you should go check it out. They're on River Road. I was a St. John's Eagle, went to West Bend West, was a Spartan. And then after that, I went up to Oshkosh, where I graduated, and met some friends and developed a desire to travel and was adventurous. I went out to California and lived out there after I worked at a camp for a summer in 2004. So I moved to California in 2005. I really liked the consistent weather that they had out there and became a runner. But one thing that I learned quickly was that they have a lot of high taxes, high housing costs, and 49ers fans, which nobody likes. And so I actually work as a claims handler with Farmers Insurance, worked in an office. I had lived in the Bay Area, then down to San Diego. And it was very hard to ever get moved out of the position in the area once you're kind of in it. But with the pandemic in 2020, we all moved to working hybrid, and then I actually went into another role where I could work from home all the time. That led to me being able to move back to Wisconsin, as I have a strong desire to want to own my own property. Like many, during the time I was on the internet a lot and hearing about all of these places like California and other areas where they're kind of trying to reduce ability to own a home, and they want people renting, which goes against everything as part of the American dream. Your freedoms tie into being able to own your own property. And it's very important to me that I, stick to having the freedoms, my freedom to praise God. And it was also important for me to come back here because of my aging mother, has sight and hearing issues. And so I came back in 2022, and I had been trying to buy property since then and had actually looked at Ozaukee County, Washington County. The Wise pool here is far better. It's actually one of the best in the state. And so that triumphed, but it became difficult. A lot of offers that I put in weren't getting accepted because there was a high demand, and everyone could see the interest rates skyrocketing. And at some point, late last year, I had almost thought maybe I need to move to where my sister is in Iowa or even out of state because it was difficult. But God had a plan. I just needed to trust it. And I didn't know that this program was in the works. And that was part of God asking me to trust him. But once I saw a listing for the Hearton Homestead program, I marked my calendar for April 4th and at noon, and I went online and I applied because I had an accepted offer for a condo on Silverbrook, actually right down the street from Home Depot and Menards, which is very convenient for a new property owner. And so the county executives that were involved in it worked religiously with the lender that I had and my real estate agent to make everything go through so that I could close on time on April 17th. And while it's a new program, it's been very easy to so far be able to go onto the portal that's been developed so that I can log my volunteer hours and get while I went to St. John's, I had decided that I wanted to join a new church, West Bend Community Church, and was able to get them signed up as an agency. So not only anything that I do to serve there, like with their kids program, but anything that I tithe can also be counted towards the incentive program, which is very beneficial to me. And the monies themselves, while not enough to actually have the down payment, they helped me get a lower interest rate, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that was hundreds of dollars that I save in being in the lower interest rate helps me to be able to continue to give in the tithing and be able to afford food, which, I kind of like. I've gotten used to it. And another thing with the program with the volunteer hours and with the different agencies is that there's a newsletter they send out. So even though you might sign up with one agency, it's not like I'm prohibited from doing volunteer work for others. And so I saw that the Friends of the West Bend Parks and Rec, where they were doing the beer garden, that was this last weekend. So I was able to sign that up, and it was a great way of logging hours. But I also got a free concert out of it 2 nights in a row, and so that was fun, and it was a great way to network. While I love being able to work from home for farmers, it doesn't get me out and into the community and meeting new people, which is integral to, having been moved back here and wanting to have friends and socialize. So that's it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Matt Knight. My wife and I, Carolyn, we were residents. We moved to Wisconsin in '97 from the East Coast, and when we first moved out here, actually, I used to come out here for work all the time, and I'm just talking about Wisconsin in general. I'll talk about Washington County in a minute. But, I actually said at one point, the company that I was working with in New England, my customer was out here, or a firm that I was working with is in the Fox Valley, and they said, you should come out and live out here. I said, you'd never catch me dead living in Wisconsin. And because I love being near in the mountains, nearby the ocean, everything else, and we, fast forward a few years to about 1997, my wife and I bought a house in the Fox Valley. The company made an offer that I couldn't refuse, and what I found in Wisconsin values, we just absolutely loved the education, the focus on education in this place in Wisconsin, just blew us away. So. Fast forward a few more years. Obviously, I've been around a while. My wife and I, when our last child graduated from high school, we moved down to this area, but we moved into a condo. And we've been in the condo living for more than 10 years. And we realized just how much we missed having our own land. My wife's a gardener from way back. And just having kind of our own space. And when you're living, and again, nothing wrong with condo living because you have an ownership factor there, but having your own house is just amazing again. Having had it for so many years, I didn't realize how much we missed it. And we moved into the Oaks of Jackson. We closed April 26th. And we are just absolutely thrilled. We cannot believe this program because we were going to move to another condo because it was getting built up where we were in Menominee Falls, and our daughter lives in Hartford. We wanted to move a little bit closer. Nothing was affordable. We had a nice condo, but things that were on the market were considerably more expensive for a lot less, and it's so frustrating. And when we stumbled across this program, and I say stumbled because we were early in the process last year, we started looking into it. We started talking to a builder. And they recommended this program. They said, you should check into it. And we started looking into it. And it just, all the pieces started to fall into place very, very quickly. We are so grateful to the county and to the village of Jackson and to the builders for doing something like this because in my conversations with the county executive when he came to visit us, this is something, where else are they doing this? No, this is something that was started here. This is so innovative. To be able to give more people the opportunity to own homes in a crazy market. The speaker before me talked about California. My son lives in California. You can't afford housing in California. It's crazy. So this dream of home ownership, I applaud this, the county board, the supervisors, everybody for getting behind this and making it a true private-public partnership so that people like us can have that dream of home ownership again. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Mitch Mikowski. I'm from West Bend. I grew up around here. I graduated from West Bend East in 2011, went to UW Milwaukee, graduated from there in 2016. Shortly after that, I moved out to Seattle. I was moving, kind of following a friend who went out there. I was just looking for new experiences, the ocean, the mountains, and it was fantastic out there. I loved it. But I did move back last year just to come back with, be around family and friends again. And I had spent the last year living in an apartment, but a couple of months ago I wanted to upsize. I wanted more space for hobbies. I wanted a garage. And I was looking firstly for the rental market again to see if there was anything out there available, maybe a single-family home. For my needs, I didn't find a lot. I thought actually the rental market was pretty rough here in West Bend. I started to do the math on homes, and it was barely looking like it would work out, but it would have put me in a pretty tough situation in terms of money, like savings-wise, to move into this home, with comfort and a cushion. The Hart and Homestead grant, which I heard of probably pretty close to the end of when it had been still open, gave me that extra amount to pretty much cover the down payment and closing costs to where I could retain my savings, move in comfortably, be able to do all those fun first-time homeowner things, the repairs and the organization, and be able to contribute back to the city, be a contributing member. And I only just closed on May 31st, so this is going to be the other side of it. The volunteering side of it is something that I still need to kick off with the grant office. But I can see the value of not just getting me tied to West Bend since I have a home here now, but tied back to the organizations in the area, how I can give back to the city and be tied to the city. I'm excited for those things, and I see the value in this grant. I think you should consider people like me who are kind of on the edge of home ownership. This lets me build, as a younger person, build a future for myself and be set up down the line in West Bend. I'm really excited to have had this opportunity in this grant. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question for you. How did you actually hear about the Hart and Homestead program?
Through a realtor at a showing, actually. The realtor that I was working with hadn't heard of it, but a local realtor had. So she just kind of mentioned it in passing almost. It was very lucky. And I applied probably 36 hours later, and I think I don't remember what it was, like number 86. I don't know how many people actually got in, but I think it was around 80 something. 104, yeah. So towards the end. 104.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome home.
Yes.
Before we go any farther, a motion and a second, please. Supervisor Kelling, Supervisor Shadron.
This was just general consent.
Yeah, shot me again.
Strike that.
Deb, I have a question. I've been to a couple closings. Who contacts the people after to talk about the repayment and the volunteer?
Sure. So after following the closing, there's actually an email that is sent out to the recipient asking them to set up a one-on-one meeting with Caitlin Burgeon, who's in the Community Development Office. And she sits down and meets with the recipients and their whole family one-on-one, talks about their interests, where they may already be volunteering or where they donate to. And then if those organizations are not part of our partnering agencies, then she actually reaches out to those agencies and meets with them and tries to get them. And so far, all of them have signed up to be a partner for Hart and Homestead. So it's been a really nice opportunity to connect the recipients with those organizations that they're already volunteering with or donating funds to, and then also matches them up to other organizations that they may not have already considered that are already partnering agencies with the county. And to answer your question, any organization that is interested that serves the residents of Washington County is able to just give Caitlin a call, and she'll be happy to sign up. And we actually have a whole list of hundreds of agencies that we're slowly going through, in addition to those agencies that the recipients really want to connect to. So we're making those agencies and organizations a priority to get those on board as soon as possible, so the recipients can start donating and volunteering as soon as possible. And what's interesting is that in the meetings that Caitlin has had with the recipients, they're all very eager to get moving on earning their incentive. And I really just wanted to thank all three of you for coming here today. I know it can be a little unnerving, but I really appreciate you telling your story. That's very insightful and very powerful. And I believe that this has really been game-changing for all of you. It's so impactful, this program. We've heard that from all the recipients that have closed. We've closed on over 30 homes so far with the recipients, and it's a story that has been repeated over and over, that it is a game changer, getting homeowners into, or getting buyers into their homes. It wouldn't happen without Hearton Homestead. It just wouldn't. So,
Thank you.
Again, thanks to our three guests. And one thing I just wanted to point out to the committee is when we first talked about this program, there was a few things that we were trying to get at. One was tying people to the community through community involvement. And there's three really good examples there of how that's working. Another thing that I kind of got a little gloam on was that they heard from their developer, from their realtor. So it seems like the program is spreading enthusiastically throughout that community, which is what we want to encourage this.
it is.
program. So it seems to me, from my point of view, this thing is really
And the other thing that I wanted to point out, and I'm going to mirror what Christian Teschlock said at the county board meeting, is that it's that the non-residents, and we've heard a little bit, from that today, but 35%, over 35% of these recipients are non-residents that are making their home in Washington County. That is very impactful, and it will certainly have an impact on, future, workforce attraction.
Supervisor Shadron.
Has anybody thought of, and it might be a long shot, but thought about reaching out to the volunteer fire departments?
Yeah, actually, we already have. Yeah, and if you look on your list, I think we have one signed up. Yep, St. Lawrence is on there, and we're in the process of talking with the Village of Jackson right now, and we do have other meetings set up. So
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Schwab.
Thank you. The program is obviously successful, so thank you and your committee for all the hard work and effort you put into it. But I think just looking at the use of ARPA funds, in many ways, ARPA funds were designed just to be blown by communities. And this, I love it because it's anti just blow the dollars right now. It's actually building something. It's building the community. It's building the county. It is, in my opinion, one of the best uses of ARPA dollars that anyone could ever have possibly conceived of. So,
yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you for your work.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's all about the people.
Is that it?
Unless you have any questions? Or?
I believe you have our consensus for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Executive Showman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things I'd like the committee to contemplate as the consensus. I appreciate you granting that. But first and foremost, you heard from a couple of folks today that are what we talked about back in October of 2021, bringing our kids back. We aren't very good at that, and here are two examples of getting better. And I know that out of the 104 incentives, there are many more than that. In addition, the Next Gen housing projects in Jackson and hopefully soon in Kewaskum as well, and the one in Hartford are having that same impact. We know it for a fact. And they're bringing some folks from other places too, which is wonderful. It's doing exactly what we designed it to do, and we're very happy about that. That being said, I appreciate Supervisor Schwab's comments about utilizing ARPA in this way. Our goal was always to make it very much a return on investment and not a flash in the pan. This certainly is doing that. But these dollars today are a seed, a down payment, so to speak. And I mean for the community at large, not just for the individuals in the incentive program. This really needs to be something that has some kind of sustainability to it if we're to really cultivate success in the long haul. First of all, I ask you to contemplate these dollars in the form of a challenge grant for the community in general, for our philanthropists, for our business owners. Put put money into the game yourselves. Help us. We've put up, almost $2.5 million. This will be another $500,000. We've put almost $3 million into this program, and I think now is the time to ask those philanthropic givers in this county, those businesses who will certainly benefit from more opportunity for employees, to also help match this $500,000. After that, I think if we're going to continue to do this, we need a sustainable funding stream. And it isn't going to be to keep going to the philanthropists. It isn't going to keep coming to ARPA or general fund transfers. We have to have a dedicated revenue source. And so I'd ask you to start the wheels turning, thinking about that. I certainly have some ideas, but this has got to be something that, it doesn't go on forever, but certainly is something that in the next handful of years we've got to really commit to, and I want to certainly make it something that's part of the next biennial budget, and hopefully sooner than that. I think Deb mentioned earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong with this number, as of last week, the waiting list was 78.
It's 88 now.
It's 88 now. We're pushing the original number we had, and that was gone in 29 days or something like that. The $500,000 that we're proposing today, if we're able to match it with philanthropic giving or private sector giving, that'll accomplish about 50. So we'll still have 38 people on a waiting list, which is fantastic. And it just goes to show we need to keep pushing. The other thing that Christian Chechlock said, and I don't know that he said it in the last meeting, but that I would certainly point to, if you recall when we went through our strategic priorities document, there was a little bit of dissidence, and good dissidence, around and friction around workforce, and specifically county government getting into workforce attraction efforts. Christian said at one meeting, it could have been your county board meeting, but I've heard him say it multiple times, this is the most effective workforce attraction initiative he's ever seen. How many times can you say, we put this amount of dollars in place and we had a 37% return of non-county people coming in to participate? Not just you got them eyes on a screen, not just 1 million impressions. You literally got 37 households, potentially 74 individuals moving into the community. And now those are all opportunities for our workforce. So, this is a humongous workforce attraction opportunity. There's nothing like it in the country, as was mentioned before. I think we really need to double and triple down, including putting long-term investment into this. I thank you for your consensus in taking us one more step forward. Once again, challenge the philanthropists and businesses in this community to help us make that a full step. And then we'll be back in short order coming to you, trying to figure out what's a sustainable way for us to fund this, at least for the next 5 years or something like that, because it's make or break. You've heard me give the speech of the demographics in the next decade. We've got to do it right now, and we are doing it. So thank you.
Supervisor Shadron.
Executive Shulman, is there a way we could establish an endowment fund that would be able to generate funds every year to add to this? Yes.
Yes is the answer. It would take a massive undertaking. Remember, we created, for example, an endowment fund with the golf course, and that was $6 million, and I think it's generating something like $150,000 or $200,000 a year, and we need probably close to 5 to 10 times that annually. So it would be extraordinarily ambitious, but I think this is the kind of initiative, if we can just get the right people to hear about this, I think it's completely achievable. I think we've just got to prove, probably to ourselves, that we can put our money where our mouth is on an ongoing basis. And once that happens, I think you'll see massive investment from, frankly, all over the country.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And kind of in parcel and part to our last discussion, here we actually have proof You look at all the companies in Hartford that are looking for employees like Brown and all those. Here it is. This is a way they can do it. And with a little bit of help from each of these companies, I mean, all of them offer $10,000 sign-on bonuses and all that kind of stuff. Well, here's a concrete way to get them actually living in your community. I would think that these companies, really we have to find a way to present that to these companies because I think there's a great opportunity. Helgeson, even though they're not necessarily in Dodge, but but they're here and they're looking for employees in our area. Seems like they would be somebody, the graphics companies that are around. Geez, there's just tons of people looking for, and they have great paying jobs. But the number one driver is there's no place for their employees to live. Or it's very difficult to get a place. You can't really afford it, and therefore they don't want to take on these jobs. They don't want to commute from other areas. So it just seems to me like this should be a no-brainer for those companies to look at. Even a smaller investment could have really good returns. Because each employee is costing you, hundreds of thousands of dollars
Absolutely.
to get them on and keep them on.
Totally agreed. And Helgeson is in Washington County, so that's
I thought
good
it was
news.
okay.
Signacast is the one that's right on the line. They're right on the line, yeah.
Yeah, right on the border there. So, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Our next item is the tourism grant report and update.
All right, thank you. So you'll recall that we allocated $300,000 of ARPA funding in March for a tourism grant. We had 38 applications totaling over $1 million to that grant program, so very good turnout there. The review team, which was comprised of Chief Community Development Officer Jamie Ludovic, Supervisor Carol Mary, and myself, worked to evaluate the applications. We collaborated with the county executive's office to kind of narrow down a list of recipients. That list is shown on this committee report. So those awards have been communicated. We're in the process of distributing those awards. There were lots of good projects. So many, in fact, that the review team and the county executive have been talking about potentially awarding an additional $100,000 worth of tourism grants. Supervisor Mary couldn't be here in support today. He's traveling, from what I understand, but he is in support of this, and he sent me a nice note in support of this action as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the committee report. Similar to the last action item, or the last item rather, we're really just looking for just a general consensus on the additional $100K. But that would be awarded to fund very similar projects to the list that you'll see here.
Would you like to read Supervisor Mary's comments?
I can read a quick excerpt from it, I think. He says, while these grants will go a long way to helping some very worthy events grow and become more successful, there are many events and activities which had to be passed over simply because we did not have enough funds to reach out further in our gesture of assistance. He says, I encourage the executive committee to consent to add $100,000 to expand these grants so that we might touch more activities and more citizens in our county. This could ideally draw in more outside parties to come and enjoy the hospitality that we know is so plentiful in Washington County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is just a consensus opinion, so we have discussion, comments.
Got a big thumbs up from me.
Great.
We all concur, and I might add that in one of the committees it was asked, where does that put us with the ARPA funds? And with these two donations, incentives, it gets us to just below $1 million. So, yeah. So we have consensus.
Thank you.
Our next item is the county microloan program.
Hello again. So the county, as noted in the committee report, has had the microloan program since the COVID-19, shortly after that in August of 20. It was successful. We've had 16 loans issued under that program. The loan window closed once we started having the applications taper off. But now recently, EDWC has had some renewed interest in small business loans, just based on how banks and the economy are currently doing loans for businesses. So they proposed a few minor modifications to the program that we previously had in place, so that we could kind of restart the program, and instead of having it focused on COVID-19, it's more focused on just in general small business loan needs in the communities. So the second page of the committee report for this kind of highlights some of those changes. Some of it's just more wording changes to remove the COVID-19 references, but in structure and format, it's essentially the same. The loan amount increased slightly by $5,000, and then the rates also increased in relation to the current rate environment with the banks. So if there's any specific questions or anything I can cover, I will try and do that.
I know that this being administered by EDWC gives me a comfort level. We've had very good experience with them, and we know from presentations how thorough they are. So anyone else have a comment? So do we need a motion on this, or is this a concurrence?
Yep.
I would say thumbs up.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last item for discussion tonight, actually a resolution.
Yeah, I thought you got F yet, right?
Oh, sorry, I skipped it.
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Supervisor Schwab, Supervisor Kelly. And from what I understand, this is simply may indicate a little bit more cost in the legal fees for the Samaritan transfer.
Lawyers cost money.
Thank you, Chair. The only question I have is, considering what Matt said today and the fact that it could be 11 months, it could be 15 months, it could be a year, you'll keep coming back. I'm wondering if there isn't a better way to do this with, some limitations, but not nickel and dime, not every 75,000, or is there a better way to word it so you don't have to keep coming back?
Executive Shulman.
Yeah. Yes. So the short answer is the more efficient way to do it would be for us to simply absorb the cost in Samaritan's budget and keep those on a rolling basis. You were told at the last county board meeting there will be a closeout cost that you have to sign off on, and just roll it into that number. That's plausible. The reason we didn't propose it that way is because then it gets lost in that money and that funding, and we wanted to try to be totally transparent. If you felt like you would be okay with us just putting it into that dollar amount, rolling it into that bigger amount, which will be multi-million, we can certainly do that, and we could come back periodically and report it to you if you'd prefer that. But we just wanted to be as transparent as possible, and you can see we started at 50 and went up to 75 like that because we don't want to keep coming back. I'd actually prefer it if it were the other way, but we were trying to be as transparent as we possibly could be.
I think that a compromise of just rolling it in, it sounds easier on the books. I don't know, I'm not an accountant, but it makes sense. And then just maybe update us, highlight it in some kind of report yet, well, this is now the closing cost, blah, blah, blah.
Is that okay?
Supervisor Kelling has.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a great point under most things that we do. However, in this case, at the end, we're gonna have a really big cell, and we have a board that's, gonna be looking at millions. And I think, if we chip off and are transparent on some of the monies that we're providing on the outside, it'll hopefully lessen the blow a little bit. And hopefully when that conversation happens for the closeout, the multi-millions, that it might help to make that a more smoother transition. So I would really kind of prefer it this way, because I think it really does, in the end, when we have that, and I'm sure it's probably going to be somewhat of an argument, but you never know. I think just peeling off some of the monies and some of the conversation will make it a little less
of a shock.
Yeah, kind of lessen the blow. So
Yeah, to your point, it's completely personal preference. I mean, it's a left pocket, right pocket discussion. It just depends on how you want to handle it. The beauty of handling it by rolling it into Samaritan is you don't keep coming back and asking. And quite honestly, we're probably talking about the difference of between 1.9 million or 2 million or 2.2 million or 2.3 million. Well, what I learned in the last week is that no matter what we do, somebody's going to bloviate about what a terrible idea and how we, blah, 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 blah. So we've got an overwhelming majority of this board, and I think this community, that support the direction that we're going. Now it's a matter of personal preference. I don't have one. I'm a big believer in being as transparent as we can be. And now, either way, you know what's coming. So if we do it this way or we do it Supervisor Schulteis's way, it doesn't really make any difference. That just mitigates the possibility of saying, we were wrong, we need another 25,000.
No, I don't see it as wrong. It's more of a continuing thing.
Agreed.
Lawyers, they bill by hours, and you put money in the pot, they take it all up in their retainer, and there you go. And now you move on to the next payment. But in the end, politically speaking, and you hate to be that way, but it's just a fact of life. If it lessens the argument, or at least keeps things somewhat civil when it comes to the big ask, I think it's kind of worth it. But that's my opinion.
I agree with that. And I'm sorry, I'm the eternal optimist, but I've been led to believe that probably this 75 is the end of the ask. Fingers crossed. So I think we should just go with this for now. And the next time, maybe just talk about seriously rolling it into the final cost. We have consensus on that?
Yeah, either way, I don't care. So that would be fine.
Okay.
Everybody likes to blame lawyers, so we can.
All right, well.
I never would blame a lawyer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We were back there. He's right behind me.
Well, he's not throwing stuff at us yet, so we're good.
He's laughing. He recognizes a tree for that.
County lawyer, not one of those big shots. So I'm one of you guys. That's right.
You are salaried, aren't you? Any further discussion? No, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And now we move. Nobody
Now we got
opposed.
the resolution.
The general fund transfer for maintenance at the UWM-WC facility. Motion by Supervisor Shadron. I'll be the second.
I do have a couple concerns with the way the motion is written. Items 2 and 3 under the whereases. My concern is that if we say that the costs for maintenance will shift to the county, we're accepting responsibility for those costs in perpetuity, right? Whereas if we say the costs would be shifting to the owner, and in parentheses, owners, that opens the door to sharing those costs with the city. And if we've already figured out what percentage that is and could split that out, that might be helpful. Or if we know that to what extent the city is another owner, that might be helpful. But I just don't want the county to be responsible for all that going forward. And then in the future, or in resolutions as well, I would also prefer if the resolution said that the costs for maintenance be tracked and that those costs be settled up at any closing that might happen in the future. And if those costs aren't recouped, by that time that those costs be deducted from the other interested parties' sales tax payments.
I believe Executive Showman has had a conversation with the mayor, may have more input here.
I have had a conversation with the mayor. I've had several conversations with the mayor. I was hoping by now we would have an agenda for a joint meeting because I think it would begin to address a number of those concerns, which are all completely legit and valid. We are waiting on the final information to be able to share with the city as regard to an appraisal of that property. We want to make sure we're able to talk to them, but this conversation is extraordinarily difficult to have without the city participating. And so while I'm all about efficiency and trying to do a general fund transfer to make sure Scott's got the tools he needs, I think we've got to keep the pressure on the city to have a conversation. Otherwise, we're going to pass a resolution that points to you're going to pay us and a partner on the other side who's not being a partner on the other side. And I believe in my heart of hearts from talking to the mayor that he wants to do that. I want to give him enough time to be able to do that. We got to get that meeting. We have to. And not just about this. There's 5 other things. I know the city's attorney sent out a email basically telling the city council and the mayor not to have this meeting. I think that's a giant mistake because there's so many things beyond this. There will be a lead lateral update at the Public Works Committee. There's next generation housing opportunities beyond what we talked about today. There's a lot of stuff we should be talking about and working together on. This is just one of them, and I am 100% on board, Supervisor Schwab, with everything you said, but without having the city across the table, it's just going to be more resolutions and letters to the editor. And so I'm just going to ask you to push it one more month, and if we can't get something in another month, I guess all we're left with is resolutions and letters.
Yeah, and I had every intention of motioning to postpone.
I was going to second that.
Because I am aware of the executive's efforts with the mayor, as well as I've spoken to a couple of aldermen who also see that this is probably a good thing to discuss. So I think the interest is there, and I think it will happen. It certainly should happen. And I totally disagree with the city attorney in that regard. I think if we're not talking, then we're not solving problems, and it's not up to this executive committee to solve this problem on its own. It should include the city of West Bend and the alderman present. So I would motion to postpone.
John, you second?
I second.
I suspect that the city's lawyer is paid by the hour. Did you have something to add,
Lawyers again.
Mr. Schmidt? No?
Just that, yes, we will be tracking all the costs.
Thank you.
For the building.
Before we go further, do we have to deal with the first motion first, or when you postpone, that deals with the first motion?
There's a motion to postpone on the floor, so the only debate that can occur right now is the merits of whether or not to postpone, and a vote must be taken on that.
Do you have
I think
comments
it's-
on that, Merritt?
It's speaking to postponement. My question is by postponing this resolution, are we not doing any work out there then currently? Or are we doing it, but we're just not paying for it?
Neither is really the answer, right?
Yes, starting July 1, we'll be out there. You know, that's when the electricity bill comes to Washington County and stuff like that. So not yet, but starting on July 1, we'll be out there doing preventive maintenance, grass cutting, stuff like that.
In other words, we'll be doing work, we'll be paying for it, we'll be robbing one fund, waiting for a solution, and it'll be backfilled. I mean, no matter what, we have to pay the bills.
Correct.
So, does that answer your question, Supervisor Krebs?
No, you don't have to pay the bills if it's not your property. And if the property ownership is in question, power companies discontinue services all the time, and right now the property's not at risk of freezing.
I'm in agreement with that. I'm in a total agreement with that. However, I would say ownership is not in question. It's partnership that's in question, which is the impetus of the postponement. I mean, you know, if you had a partner in ownership in a rental property, you'd still have to be paying the bills. You just now got to battle with your partner to get that side of it figured out. That's what this really is about,
So-
which is why we have to pay it.
So we're a partnership of some sort, and we will settle one way or another. Someone will settle
Yes.
the accounts later on.
Yes, and full transparency, this is our only leverage to get to them to the table. We have a resolution on the table.
Okay.
We take this resolution off the table, it removes leverage. And they know that. I mean,
We have a motion and a second to postpone. Any further discussion on that? And all in favor, say aye.
Mr. Chairman, let's clarify for the record, it's a motion to postpone to the next meeting, though. Otherwise, if it's a motion to postpone, it kills off the resolution for the session.
To the next meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next executive meeting.
Next executive. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Our next meeting is Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. I will be on vacation. Mr. Schwab